Hey everyone, Supercy here. So we're nearing the end of the year and I thought, you know what? This might be a good moment to take a look back at the year 2021. So what I've done is I've made a list of the 10 best plugins of the year, or 10 of the best plugins of the year in my opinion. To be clear, only plugins that were released in 2021 made it to the list. Now, by the way, I will link everything up in the description, so should you be interested, check the description. Now, full disclosure, most of the links will be affiliate links, which means that should you be interested and use one of those links, there will be no extra cost to you, but I would get a little commission, which of course would help support the channel. Okay, now let's get started. Now, first one on the list, and this is in no particular order, but first one on the list is SplitEQ by Eventide. Now, I already did a more in-depth video about SplitEQ a while ago, so go check it out. I will leave links in the description and up in the cards. But SplitEQ is basically an equalizer, an EQ, with at least one revolutionary feature. And that is that it can split the audio signal into transient parts and tonal parts. And that opens a whole new world of possibilities. Now, it also comes with some panning and some mid-side options. Overall, it has a great interface, great looking interface, very easy to use, very intuitive. I would just say go check the video I already did on SplitEQ to see some examples of how you can use SplitEQ. Amazing plugin. Okay, next one on the list. Speaking of EQs, this year we've seen the release of another awesome EQ, and that is SmartEQ 3 by Sonable. Now, I also already did a video about this a while ago. I will link it up for you to go check it out. Now, as the name suggests, SmartEQ 3 is obviously a smart plugin. So it's packed with artificial intelligence, and what it can do is you can let it listen to any recording. It will analyze that recording, and within seconds it will suggest to you a very detailed EQ curve. And what it attempts to do with that is kind of to clean up that recording, and you can then potentially use that recording as a good starting point in your mix. Now, one awesome extra feature that SmartEQ 3 comes with lets you balance or mix up to 6 tracks. It does it in a very sophisticated way. You can also use layers, and with those layers you can bring some instruments to the front, so to speak, sonically, or you can push some instruments to the back. So really great stuff. So if you're into smart plugins, this is definitely one to check out. Alright, next one on the list. We're staying with artificial intelligence for a moment. Next one is Playbeat 3 by Audio Modern. Now, Playbeat 3 is basically a smart groove machine. You can let it generate grooves for you with up to 8 different sounds or 8 different tracks, with one maybe for the kick drum, one for the snare drum, one for the hi-hat. You get the idea. Now, you can let it randomize different parameters. So of course, first of all, the steps themselves, but you can also let it randomize the volume, the pitch, panning, and some other stuff as well. Now, the nice thing about it is that you can decide for yourself how much you're letting it take over the creative process from you. So for example, if you want, with one click, you can let it create an entire groove. Or you could say, okay, no, I only want you to randomize the kick drum. Or you could say, okay, I want you to randomize everything, but exclude the kick drum. Or you can exclude the volume from being randomized, So you have a lot of options there. And of course, once you've let it randomize stuff, you still have the option to make some adjustments. All right, moving on to the next one on the list. Also a drum plugin. This is Drums by UJam. Or maybe officially I should say Symphonic Elements Drums by UJam. Yeah, I'm just gonna say drums. So what is drums? Well, drums is first of all a sound library. So it's a sound library of orchestral drum sounds taken from the collection of the legendary film composer Hans Zimmer. So it comes with tons of samples, and as you can also read on the website, so drums features 53 styles with 23 ready-made phrases each for a total of 1219 phrases. On top of that, every style comes with 5 one-shot hits and metals. So that's a huge library. Now, on top of being a sound library, drums also comes with some finisher effects. Now, what are finisher effects? Now, finisher is kind of a technology developed by UJAM that lets you very easily manipulate sound. So you can bend things, you can modulate, you can add some stutter effects, for example. You can change the character of the sound. So endless possibilities. And because of this, because you can alter the sound so drastically, you can use it for basically any style of music. So basically any genre, and it becomes a really creative instrument with which you can do some really awesome stuff. Alright, moving on to another plugin that I already did a video on. Go check it out. So this is Initial Slice by Initial Audio. Now, obviously this is aimed at beat makers, hip-hop beat makers, and it is basically a combination of a few things. So first of all, it is a slicer, a loop slicer. So you can bring in your loops, you can slice them up, you can add some effects, you can manipulate the sound a little bit. So it's a slicer. It's also a sound library. Already it comes with tons of samples, mainly drum samples, but also some 808 samples. But you can also bring in your own samples. Okay, so it's also a sound library. And thirdly, it's also a sequencer. So you can make sequences of your slices. So the slices you've created, you can make a sequence of that. You can also sequence the drum sounds. You can sequence the bass or the 808 sounds. And then at the end, you can bring that all together. You can mix them all together in one entire arrangement, which they call a beat starter. Now this thing already comes with over 300 loops. It also comes with over 300 beat starters already. You can use them, you can modify them, do what you want with them, so it's super inspirational and it's a very, very versatile tool. Okay, next, something completely different. Let's talk about Paragon ST by Nugent Audio. Now, a while ago, this was last year, Nugent Audio released Paragon. Now, Paragon is, as they say, a true convolution reverb. Now, using that same technology, this year Nugent Audio developed and released Paragon ST. Now, Paragon ST is basically the stereo-only version of Paragon. Now, about convolution reverbs, provided that the quality is good enough, convolution reverbs tend to be a bit more realistic in some ways than algorithmic reverbs. On the other hand, algorithmic reverbs tend to offer a bit more options in terms of tweakability. Now, Paragon ST is kind of the best of both worlds. So it is a convolution reverb, it is very realistic, but it's also very flexible, kind of like an algorithmic reverb. Now let's take a look at some of the features they mention on the website. So Paragon Reverb in a music-friendly package, unique technology for resynthesis of authentic IRs, so impulse responses, stereo width control, tempo locked pre-delay and modulation, mic distance control, spectral analysis. Now, bottom line, this is a really high-end convolution reverb, and I'm very impressed with the technology behind Paragon and Paragon ST. Okay, moving on. Next, we have SoundID Reference from SonarWorks. Now, SoundID Reference is an update to Reference 4 by SonarWorks. So they've updated it and they've changed the name to SoundID Reference. Now, what is this all about? Okay, now all headphones, all pairs of headphones, but also all pairs of monitor speakers all have their own characteristics. So for example, some headphones may be a little bit more bass heavy, whereas others may put a little bit more emphasis on mid frequencies or high frequencies. So they all gonna sound a little bit different. Same is true for monitor speakers, but if you're listening to monitor speakers, maybe even more important than the monitors is the room that you're in. Now, when we're mixing music, we usually want the listening environment to be as neutral as possible, to be as flat as possible. Now, SoundID Reference will manipulate the sound, it will manipulate the output that's being sent to your headphones or to your monitor speakers in such a way to make it seem like you're in a much more optimized listening environment. Now there are two different versions, obviously one for headphones and one for speakers. Now regarding the headphones version, Sonarworks has tested and measured numerous pairs of headphones. Now based on those measurements, it has created profiles. It keeps profiles of all of those headphones. Now you need to tell the software what headphones you're using, so what brand, what type of headphone, and based on that it will apply the appropriate profile to optimize your listening environment. Now the speaker version works a little bit different. You first need a microphone. With that microphone you can let the software kind of measure your room, and based on that measurement it will also create a profile and then optimize your listening environment. So it's an ingenious concept. It's been around for a while, but it's still very much worth mentioning. Okay, next we have Cube by Lunacy Audio. Now, I also already did a video about Cube. Go check it out. Now, Cube is a synthesizer that is based on a pretty revolutionary concept, if you ask me. A bit difficult to explain in just a few sentences, but I will try. So at the heart of the interface, we have this cube shape. There's also a ball in the center of that cube, which I will get to in a second. But each of the corners of the cube, obviously we have 8 different corners. Each of those corners corresponds to an independent sample editor. So we have 8 different sample editors, individual sample editors, and in each of those sample editors we can load a sample and we can edit that sample. Now in the end what we're left with is a sound that is a combination of all of those samples, so up to 8 different samples. Now the purpose of the cube and the ball is to add some variation and movement to your sound. And it works as follows. By default, that ball is in the center of the cube, which means that all sounds are going to be equally loud. Whenever you move that ball closer to any of the corners, the sound associated with that corner is going to become louder. And conversely, whenever you move it away from that corner, the sound is going to be quieter. Obviously, we can automate the movement of the ball, and based on that concept, you can imagine that, that opens the door for creating some very complex and very interesting patterns. It's very different from anything I've ever seen before, and I think it's really an awesome plugin. Okay, next another plugin that I've already done a video on, and that is Knocktonal by DJ Swivel. Now, what is Knocktonal? Now, with Knocktonal, we can manipulate the resonance of a certain sound. And how it works is as follows. So the interface is basically made up of 2 EQs. The first EQ is a subtractive EQ, and with that we can remove some unwanted resonance, to make the sound a bit more neutral. And then we can use the second EQ, which is basically a resonant enhancer, to add some resonance at any frequency we like. We can also use MIDI to play around a little bit with the resonance and create some awesome patterns that way. And that opens the door to a whole new way of getting creative with basically any sound. So really great stuff by DJ Swivel. Okay, and then finally, last on the list, but certainly not least, we have Volcano 3 by FabFilter. Now, Volcano is a very advanced creative filter plugin, as they call it. It's actually been around for quite a while now, but this year the 3rd iteration of Volcano was released, Volcano 3. Now, some of the new features, so they've updated the interface, they've also added some EQ type filter shapes, they've also added some modulation options, and they've also improved the sound quality. So all in all, Volcano even got better than it already was. And in my opinion, this is definitely one of the best plugins that were released this year. Okay, so that's all for now. Those are my 10 best plugins of the year 2021. Go check them out for yourself and let me know what you think about them. Hope you've enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching, and I will talk to you next time.